Hey, folks, I wanted to take a moment to welcome Dixon's Fixins to the Talking About Food family. As a private chef, I know how much time you spend in grocery stores, and we've all heard the saying, time is money. That's why at Dixon's Fixins, they deliver all your beef, chicken, pork, and seafood needs at prices that fit the average family's budget. This family-owned business is committed to providing the best USDA choice and prime steak, open-range farms chicken, butcher-certified pork, and wild-caught seafood. All their products are all natural, hormone-free, with no byproducts or steroids. They treat every family they serve as if it were their own. So sit back, relax, and let Dixon's Fixins bring the best quality food right to your door, garage, or place of business, all while cutting your grocery bills in half. Check them out today at DixonsFixins.com. That's Dixon's Fixins, bringing quality food into your home and bringing your family back to the table. Hello, Grand Strand. This is Richard Florczak, the private chef to the stars, and welcome back to Talking About Food. Remember, it's the only food commentary show on the Grand Strand where we talk about restaurants, food trucks, festivals, and farmers markets. We also interview local chefs and local food business owners. I have a chef in the studio today that I've been reading a lot about. His name is Chef Robert Kaufman. He is the corporate chef at US Foods up in Myrtle Beach. I shop there a lot. Love that store. I love the fact that even though it's a restaurant supply place, it's open to the public, and they've got good stuff there. But he is also connected to the Tasting Room on 9th. And what he does there is the Tasting Menu Series. And it's really, really interesting stuff, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I wanted to welcome Chef Robert Kaufman to Talking About Food. Thanks for coming in, Chef.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite.
It's my pleasure. So if you can do us all a favor, take us from the beginning to how you ended up in the Grand Strand.
Okay, so born and raised suburbs of Illinois. My dad's side of the family had a pizzeria growing up, and so that cliche of I've been doing this my whole life very much fits.
It's true, yeah. I'm going to cut you off right away. Yeah. What kind of pizza?
It's here. So this is the thing I wanted to settle on the debate. Like,
okay, that
really walking lasagna deep dish is not Chicago style pizza. The blasphemy lasagna. It is. Yeah. So it's tavern style is what the locals in Chicago call it. So that really thin, crispy, cut into squares. That's Chicago style pizza.
And you could get it at the taverns? I mean, that's where the name came from?
Yeah.
I love it. I gotta stop you just for a second. So you probably don't know this, but when I first started talking about food, I was trying to do one pizzeria every week, and then at the end of a year, pick the best. But I just couldn't do it. But I get to them as often as I could. So when you start off with pizza, I was like, bing, okay, let's go. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
I won't
you're
interrupt.
Good. And, so again, back then there weren't child labor laws. Things like that didn't exist. On my index finger, there's a scar that goes all the way across where I was a little kid grinding cheese as a kid because it was 50 cents a bucket. My dad was a stickler for labor cost. And I remember moving the bucket of cheese, and equipment in kitchens have become much more safe to where if you open the guard on a KitchenAid, it stops and it shuts down.
It shuts off.
Yeah. That's not how it was back then, right? So me being a strong, independent 7-year-old was like, I could take apart the machine. And then I saw the blade going. I was like, oh, shiny. And of course, stuck my finger in there. Yeah. But my proudest part of that is that I had moved the cheese that I just ground out of the way so the blood in my finger didn't get into it. Yeah. So I was always about business first, obviously.
Even at 7 years old.
Yeah, great business sense, but and that's where I got my start. And my dad would always tell me as I grew up, he goes, hey, go to school, get a real job. And I was always very competitive with my dad. And I was like, listen, you're my idol, my mentor, but I'm going to show you I could be better. Right. So I was like, I'll show you. I went to culinary school, graduated in 2009, December of 2009, and immediately started working in Chicago proper. So started working at an Irish pub called the Kerryman, and that's where it just all started. Then I went to places like Little Goat and Girl and Goat, worked for Stephanie Izard there. And then, Graham Elliott had 3 restaurants at the time. He had his Michelin star restaurant, he had his sandwich place, and then the bistro that he was opening at the time. So I did an internship at Graham Elliott where Andrew Brosha was the chef when they had 1 star to get a 2nd star. And that's when it really occurred to me that if you wanted to be this quality and level, everything about food is your life.
Yeah.
So you slept it, even when you weren't at work, you dreamt about food, you slept food, you envisioned it. You were always thinking about what you could do to a dish to make and leave your footprint in it.
Right.
I think I was like 21 or 22 at the time. And then I started working 2 jobs. I wanted to be everywhere and anywhere I could to gain knowledge and gain a skill set. And I think it took till like I was 28 or 29 to actually be able to break a fish confidently and, make sauces and everything. And it was very long to get to where I was. And the best part about it is I still don't think I know everything, because this is that one career where things change.
Yeah.
You could be like, hey, making the mother sauces obviously doesn't change, but like, hey, the trend that what it is and what relays to customers and how to do it and what flavor profiles and how you could be innovative on a way of doing a potato and leek soup or doing things differently.
Yeah.
It keeps you creative and on your toes.
Yeah. And I've often said that the phrase works for most careers, but especially in the food business. If you think you know everything, you're about to get your ass kicked.
Yeah, that's when I tell people to get out. Because like if you think you know everything and you're not, you can't learn.
Yeah,
you've already lost.
Yeah. So then you had an amazing career in Chicago, Chicago area, right?
Yeah. So I grew up in the Chicago area and then focused in restaurants in Chicago proper.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So how do you then end up here in the Grand Strand?
So in 2020, my dad had passed away and COVID obviously hit. Yeah. And at one point I was like, that's it. I'm done with restaurants and cooking. Cause
really?
Yeah, I got into a point where I had a couple customers just off the wall. They're like, hey, the chicken pot pie is too hot. The creme brulee is too cold. And I had just gotten at my wit's end where I was like, I need to.
If you don't mind me asking, because this is very personal to me as well. Did the fact that this all happened near when your father died have something to do with it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think during COVID, I didn't have time to properly cope and deal with becoming whole again, because here everything in the industry was changing every other day, especially in Chicago.
I had my restaurant then in Los Angeles. I get you.
You're like, hey, now it's only outdoor seating or it's only to go, and then trying to adapt and maintain a job while still trying to grieve and make sure my mom's okay, my brother was okay. And that was one of the tough things too, where I was like, hey, trying to tell my mom. So we were at the funeral home and she's setting up arrangements for a wake and funeral. I was like, Dad wanted to be cremated. He wanted a little necklace for you to wear. Yeah. He wanted some of his ashes by his mom and dad, and then some in Wisconsin. And then her reaction being like, well, I wish you would have told me. And I was like, well, I wish I didn't have to have this conversation with my dad too. But so that happened, and then I was just kind of at an end of it. Like I wanted to try something new. I wanted stability in my life, and not working nights and weekends, not missing holidays. And so I'd gone to actually work at UPS, unloading trucks, and then US Foods had reached out about a contracted position at the corporate offices. So I was like, yeah, I actually applied for that job, but it never came through. So if I'm going to be contracted for the job I wanted, absolutely. Started working there for about 2 weeks, and they're like, we're going to interview you because we want you to be the sous chef on the product development team. I went through all the formalities. They had offered me the job within, a couple weeks of that too. So, and at that point, I did not know the Food Fanatic chef job existed. I was like, because being a chef consultant is awesome too. So at the time, I was doing product development for what we call Scoop. So it's all of our innovative ways we come to market that makes us different from our competitors.
Yeah.
And then about 2 years later, I decided that it was time to now refocus on what I wanted in life. Like I'd wanted to get out of Illinois for a long time. And now it's, 3-4 years passed since my dad had gone. So I'm like, now let's refocus on what my goals are.
Right.
And I had applied for a few jobs, and I'll never forget the call I got when I was interviewing for this role in Myrtle Beach. And it was just the whole like, hey, build them up to let them down easy. When the hiring manager called me back, he goes, hey, how you doing? The week of Thanksgiving. Calls me on that Wednesday, and I'm just like, hey, Chef Josh, how are you? He goes, good. First, I want you to be very proud of everything you've done and how you've grown, regardless of what happens with this job. So immediately I'm thinking,
right. Where's this going?
Yeah, I was like, now I didn't get it. Cool. What's my next move? Yeah. And then he finishes up and he goes, so how do you feel about the beach? And I'm like, Chef, you could have started with that, and we could have levelcated after, right? But that's how I ended up down here. And I was like, here, 33 and a half years of snow and terrible winters. And all I've ever wanted to do was golf on my birthday in the first week of April. And now I'm at a place where I could golf year round.
You can do that.
It was a debate because there was a Milwaukee position that opened. They go, hey, look, you wouldn't have to be too far from family. And I said, yeah, but Milwaukee's cold. Like it still gets snow, and
it was one of my prerequisites for coming here. There were 3. One is political, and I don't talk politics on the show. The second one was the fishing, and the third one was the weather. Yeah, and I almost had a heart attack when I saw it snow this past winter. I'm like, are you kidding? That was not in my folder, when I got here. You have that position at US Foods, but you also do the tasting menu series at the Tasting Room on 9th in Myrtle Beach, which the tasting room itself, I haven't been there, be perfectly honest, but the tasting room itself is I can tell, very well respected. And I just adore Jamie Descalis. She's been on the show. That woman has got drive like I've never seen before. I wish I was still that way. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know. I just want to eat fish and talk about food. But you do the sort of private tasting menu series there. So tell us about that, because I you know what, you tell us first, and then I want to talk about the most recent one that you did.
Yeah. So it all started again one day. I just kind of walked in there with my mom to have a glass of wine or some cocktails.
This is the tasting room.
This is the tasting room, and I was like, it started off, I was watching season 3 of The Bear, just really binged that all the way through. And I saw them doing all the pretty food again. And it really motivated me to get back to like doing pretty food and elevated flavor profiles. Cause as we were talking before the show started, if I would ever venture back into restaurants, that's the caliber I would want to go to.
You want fine dining.
Yeah. Cause to me, that was the one place where everyone was on the same mission and same goal. It wasn't just a collect a paycheck type of vibe at the time. It was, hey, we're here to do this. We all are on the same page. We are striving for this. And it was the competitive nature to be like, hey, we're better than such and such.
Yeah.
We're and it was the competitiveness that I love too. So we get there. I binge watch all of season 3. I looked around the space of the tasting room. I was like, this place is awesome.
Yeah.
And there was nothing else I had experienced like it. And I remember talking to Lisa, and I was like, are you guys doing wine dinners at all? Like tasting?
Now,
pairings?
Lisa, that's Lisa Lee.
Yes. Sorry, Lisa Lee.
One of the owners with Jamie Descalis, and she's a sommelier. So, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. And we were doing that, and she was like, yeah, we just hired a chef to do them. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But internally, I'm still like, whatever. Cool. Good luck. No. And then I'd stopped back in like a month or so later and gone like, hey, when are the dinners going to start? I wanted to see fine dining, but it ended up working out to where I was like, hey, I'll be more than happy to help do them as well. So
yeah. And that came to fruition.
Yeah. And I manifested it, I believe is what the kids are calling that nowadays. So.
Well, it's interesting because the one that you had, the last one that you had was at Microleading Farm, which we had on talking about food last week. The owner, Oscar Chavez, and I only know it from the pictures that I've seen of the event, and every review is off the charts. I've read, I mean, not there's like a deluge of critics and influencers here in the Grand Strand, but everything I've read was fantastic about it. Please tell the listeners how it was set up, how people in the future can attend one of these things. But tell us first about the dinner at Microleden Farm.
So again, the dinner at Microleden was all Lisa Lee's idea. She had actually introduced me to Oscar at the time, brought me to the farm, and I was like, this would be a great place to do a dinner. And that was her whole objective. And that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was just talking to Oscar. I was like, hey, I need to learn all about the homesteading lifestyle because that's my end game. Like, I'm either going to have 5 acres and homestead, or I'm going to retire wealthy enough to be out of the country type thing. Right. Yeah. That's the game plan at least. And then she had booked everything. I had written the menu. We had collabed with Oscar about, what we could get from the farm and how to keep it as easy or as fresh to do everything that way.
If you don't mind me asking, this chef part of me coming out, did you approach it first through Oscar and then create your menu, or did you have an idea in mind and then saw what can I use from Oscar's Microleden Farm?
So we were on their location and they were telling me what they had, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. This will go with this protein. And then being able to be like, I know how to utilize all of these things that are available the way I would traditionally too. So it was one of those things that, like, because it was in March, there wasn't as much in the ground coming out, but here the lettuces were perfect to use, the different butter lettuces. I kept calling them red oaks. It just turned out they're like, hey, this is what we're going to have. Tell me how much you need and go from there. And I do remember Oscar, I almost had to yell at him like, hey, stop eating all the kale chips. I need those for the fish. And he goes, it's not my fault. I was like, listen, I get it, but still, I need at least mine first, and then you can have the snacks after. Yeah.
So it went, like I said, stunningly. What is next as far as the tasting series? Now, that was the first off-site one that you did. So typically they're done at the tasting room privately. So where does it go from here?
That again is what I would say is above my pay grade. So we just did our April 1 last Sunday as well. I know May will be.
That was at the tasting room?
Yeah. I know May will still be at the tasting room as well. I think she has some plans and ideas of some different things. I kind of just get told, hey, we're doing it here. Can I do that? And then, of course, I'm like, yeah, this will be fun. I like a new set of challenges every here and there.
Yeah, I always say the only way you progress is when you put yourself into a position that you don't know if you can handle it. How far out do you start devising the menu?
So right now I have May's written, and I'll start working on June's probably next week.
Will the next one coming up, will that be at the tasting room or offsite?
Yes, sir. So I believe the next two, through July, they're all going to be at the tasting room. I'm not sure if or when. I know we're going to do another one. I apologize on the if part, but when the offsite one will be next.
I see. So. All right, let's change it up a little bit here. You're a trained chef. You went to culinary school. You worked in some very impressive restaurants in the Chicago area. What is the one indulgence that you have that you'd be embarrassed for other chefs to find out about?
So
I'll tell you this before you go any further. I asked this to Chef Adam Kirby of Bistro 217. He thought for a while he was a little nervous about it, but he said, cheese whiz.
So it's funny because I had a chef that I worked with back home who would be like, I don't get you because you could do all these things. You've worked in all these places and yet you love Chili's and Panda Express. And I'm like, I tell this all the time and I own this. I'm like, I will go to Chili's. I'll get an electric blue margarita, the sizzling fajita platter.
Yeah.
You have dinner and a show, and I am not embarrassed to admit it. And
I think, and I've said this before, I think that says more about your character than just about anything. I was working for a caterer one time, and you kind of get to know the crew. You know, you get put on certain parties or whatever. And this buddy of mine, we worked together a lot and then became friendly. And we're doing our prep this one day, and the executive chef's moving around the kitchen and whatever. And it was kind of boring. And we started talking about the food we grew up on, and we were talking about Campbell's tomato soup with grilled cheese. And I said, and it's got to be Velveeta. And the chef turns around and he said, it must have sucked growing up like that. And I looked at my friend. I was like, no, this guy's missing it. So you get it. Yeah.
There was my dad's dinner was untoasted white bread, thickly sliced turkey breast, and then like brown gravy in a can.
Yeah.
Was like his homemade meal, and like shake and bake too. So like I'm not above anything. I grew up that way. So one point I always like to make too is when people are cooking for a chef, we are not judging the food you're making.
Exactly. I'm so glad you brought this up. I interrupted again. I got to tell you after this. Go ahead.
But that's the one thing, like everyone thinks that we're hypercritical of the food you're making for us. At the end of the day, we're just happy we're not cooking.
Exactly.
And I always say, I was like, hey, if you cook, I'm going to clean, or if I cook, you clean. That's kind of the back and forth. But again, if you're at my house, I'm doing the cooking and the cleaning because my OCD is I need to put this away.
Of course. Yeah. But no, I'm so glad you brought that up because I've had the most difficult time with some of the locals here that I've gotten to know that end up finding out about my background. Now, I don't walk around saying, hey, guess who I used to work for, but it comes out. And when it does, I'll be asking people, hey, where do you get a good burger around here? And they'll say, well, I don't know about you. I don't know where you, and I'm like, guys, come on. I love a great hole in the wall, and especially if I go to somebody's house and they're cooking for me, I don't care if they open up a can of beefaroni, right? I'm happy that I don't have to do it. That's Chef Robert. That's such a great point. What's your favorite pizza in the Grand Strand?
Oh, I don't have one to really say, and that's a problem because everything down here is mostly like a New York style. Yeah. And obviously Chicago versus New York, we have our issues, but one that I have really ventured to a lot is out by my house, and it's Pizza 501. I always get the Drunken Grandmother.
That's what it's called?
It's called the Drunken Grandmother. So it's more like a pan or Sicilian style pizza with vodka sauce and fresh mozzarella on it. And the only issue is it only comes in one size, which is like a 18-inch box.
Yeah, that's good for me.
Yeah, and I was like, well, at least I have it for a couple days,
Yeah. Have you been to Anto's?
No, but that's a place that's on my list to try.
I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to give away my favorites because I'm supposed to tell them at the end of the year. But I've got, I would say, 5 contenders for the best.
Okay.
And that's one of my favorite finds lately. And it's really cool. I own that traditional Neapolitan wood-fired pizza for 10 years. So I've made my fair share of traditional pizzas. And they do, it's like a hybrid of New York to Neapolitan where they use a 00 flour, but they do it in a gas, what do you call the
deck ovens?
Yeah, deck. And it comes out crispy, but the crust on the edge is like airy. It's really, really good. You should check it out. What's next for Chef Robert Kaufman?
I think at one point, I think I do want to get out of the chef's coat in its entirety. That was kind of the one thing I always had envisioned of getting out of the chef coat because as you had mentioned before, it's like, hey, this is really great to be able to do things, but you don't grow or you can't know if you can't do something unless you put yourself in that position.
Right.
And I think I definitely have skills from culinary and cooking that can help transfer into a different area of a career with it. There's
any examples like you could give me of positions that you would be looking for?
I mean, obviously there's things like in the sales side. I do think I would stay with US Foods for a long time.
Yeah.
They helped me get to South Carolina. They helped me accomplish several of my 2024 goals by the first quarter of 2025. And they've been good to me, and they showed me a side of this industry that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, they're a good company. I I was dealing with their rival in Los Angeles. I won't even mention their name because they pissed me off so badly. But I've always liked dealing with US Foods. Would you like to have a restaurant of your own?
You know, that's the one thing that always kind of comes back to play. And I think if I do that, it has to be sooner than later. Because I just turned 36. Don't let my hairline fool you with being bald.
You're a kid. I'm more than 30 years. No, I'm 30 years older than you, but go ahead.
And but here, you know the wear and tear of what it does to you mentally, physically. So if I were to jump back on that horse, it'd have to be, I'd say within the next 3 years of doing it. And it has crossed my mind to like, all right, this is how I would start the group, not just the one-off restaurant. And because you got to have that one that's going to make you money. And then you got to have that level up from there. And then you could level to that top-notch fine dining where you're only doing Thursday, Fridays, or Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
But you need to funnel the revenue stream somewhere.
So then it's safe to say for right now, you're pretty comfortable where you are with US Foods, and you're getting that creative fix doing the tasting series menu.
Yeah, I kind of have my cake and eating it too at the same time a little bit. And I can't really complain. There's certain days that it's a lot of travel and it's a lot. But again, the biggest thing that was that transition was like, hey, I went from working 12 to 14-hour days to now the work day at US Foods now is like an 8 to 10-hour day. Yeah. So I'd get home and I'd be like, well, I could do dishes. I go to the gym. I'm still amped up to do like 8 more hours.
Isn't it the most amazing feeling? I after owning the restaurant, I had one more private chef job right before I moved here. And I remember at the end of the day in my job, in my private chef job, I thought, I can go home now? I mean, that's like unheard of in the restaurant business.
The biggest thing that I had, that what I call the John Travolta moment from Pulp Fiction, where he looks around the room and does that. And it was my first Memorial Day and Labor Day weekends where I had that Friday and Monday off, and it was paid time off. Yeah. at the corporate office. And I was just kind of like, am I being punked? Is this a joke? Like I was at my cousin's lake house. I was like, this is what normal people feel like. Yeah. And I was like, I'm never giving this up. So kind of spoiled around no Labor Day brunch. I was like, yep, I'm cool.
well, since your direction in the food world is more of fine dining, any restaurants that you like in the Grand Strand, fine dining wise?
There isn't enough that I've eaten at, and that's on me. I got a couple that I still want to try. Yeah.
What do you make yourself for dinner most nights?
Honestly, a lot of the time is meal prep. I've actually lost about 30 pounds since moving down here.
Good for you.
And here living by the beach, I had to get in shape. Chicago, you had those winters. You were allowed to be heavier during winter, and now having a reason to be at the ocean and take your shirt off is a reason to get in shape. But at those treat yourself days, I love a good stir fry. I love a good traditional roasted chicken where you get the crispy skin. And kind of all those things that were nostalgic growing up.
Yeah. A lot. I've interviewed, let's see, this is episode 25. So I've probably interviewed 20 local chefs. And I think every single one of us talks that way. Mm-hmm. When it comes to what we want to eat, it seems to be more traditional. Well, that is Chef Robert Kaufman, corporate chef at US Foods in Myrtle Beach. And shop there, folks. You don't have to have a restaurant. It's a good place. I will drive, let's see, it's probably about 45 minutes from me in Murrells Inlet. I will drive all the way up there just to get their basil. Love it. And also, check out the tasting room on 9th in Myrtle Beach. Chef Robert Kaufman does the tasting series there. And from what I understand, in all of the reviews, every single one of them is spectacular. Chef, thanks so much for coming in.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And coming up after the break, I want to talk about a restaurant that I tried the other day. I was very surprised. No, I shouldn't say surprised. I've heard a lot of people talk about it. It's called Casa Mia. I think that's considered Myrtle Beach, if not Surfside. Everybody loves the crab cakes there. I loved something else. I'll talk to you about it on the other side. And that was Chef Robert Kaufman. He is the corporate chef at US Foods in the Myrtle Beach location. You guys should check that place out. I like shopping there. They are typically, and they don't pay me. This is not an endorsement, a paid endorsement. They don't pay me. But I like shopping there because often if I'm doing a party, which doesn't happen a lot nowadays, but I like being able to go to a store like that where I can buy some things in bulk and it's not Costco, one of my least favorite places to shop. Good quality stuff, but I just can't stand going there. But I like US Foods. Like I said during the interview with Robert, I'll go up there just to buy their basil. You get an entire pound of basil for about $8 or $9. When you buy those little packages at like Kroger or Food Lion, they're, if I can remember correctly, I think they're 3 ounces and they're about $3 or $4. So, just do the math. But other things like, around the holidays, you're roasting turkeys and that kind of thing, and you need those aluminum tins. They have them at US Foods much cheaper than you can buy most other places. And I'll get some of my commercial grade utensils there, tongs and spoons and what have you. And they've got a fresh produce area. Like I said, you can buy the fresh basil, all types of herbs and cheeses. And I like it. I like that place. Anyway, I mentioned that I went to this restaurant called Casa Mia in Surfside, and I really liked it. But the strangest thing is, I have passed this restaurant when you're on 17 bypass and you're headed north from, say, the Myrtle's Inlet area. It's off on the right next to Honey Baked Hams. And I remember the first time I noticed it, I saw Casa Mia. I said, oh, I wonder if that's Mexican. Well, I didn't notice the second word Mia. What jumped out at me was casa. And when you spend 40 years in Southern California where there's a business on every corner that starts with the name Casa, I just assumed it was Mexican. Stupid of me. But anyway. And then somebody told me that it's actually Italian. I said, oh, okay. I thought it was Mexican. It's Italian. And then they told me they're famous for their crab cakes. I'm like, okay, my vision of it changed a couple times. But anyway, I went there with my wife and our 2 friends, Anthony and Linda, last week for dinner. And it was really good, but it's very odd at the same time. They have this. It's an Italian restaurant, but they have this eclectic menu. Like when I sat down, I started, looking at the menu and I'm thinking, I'm still on that ridiculous low carb diet. So I'm going to have some sort of chicken dish. But then I see, they have some of the regulars like calamari. They've got roasted Brussels sprouts, which we had, which were pretty decent, as a starter. They have duck wings instead of chicken wings. They have duck wings, but they're in sweet and sour sauce, which is as far from Italian as you can possibly get. They also have spanakopita, which is a Greek dish for people that don't know. It's made with phyllo dough, these real paper-thin pieces of dough, very brittle. You have to brush it with melted butter, and then you fill it with a filling, typically spinach. Well, if it's spanakopita, it is spinach and feta, and then it's rolled and then baked. But it's just kind of odd to see. On an Italian menu, they have this, I didn't have it, but I saw somebody get it. It was a seafood mac and cheese, comes with, I think it's like 5 different types of cheeses and shrimp and crab. And that just seemed so good. And they also have, I didn't have this either, Neapolitan pizza. Ironically, I feel like I'm the pizza king, and we weren't there for that. So maybe I'll go back for it. Although, they say authentic brick oven pizza, and then I noticed it was fired with gas, which is kind of a non sequitur. So anyway, we sit down, and for sure we wanted to have, or my wife and I wanted to try the crab cakes. It's what they're most famous for, even though they're an Italian restaurant. It doesn't bother me one way or another. If the food's good, I really don't care. So my wife had that, and they were spectacular. And it came with the French fries and, your choice of salad or whatever. My friend Anthony chose their pasta called voodoo pasta. It comes tossed with Jamaican jerk chicken, which we add yet another layer of nationality to this restaurant. He let me taste it. It was okay. I don't know if I would necessarily order it again. And I had chicken parmesan. Not one of the fanciest Italian dishes that is made. But this chicken parmesan, I wasn't expecting much. Like I said, I'm still on that ridiculous diet. It drives me nuts. I was there for a number of reasons. I've heard a lot about it. I wanted to try it. We love going out with our friends Anthony and Linda, so that was a nice night out. And, I do this for the show. I want to be able to tell the folks that listen, if someplace is worth going to. And I wasn't expecting much from a typical dish like chicken parmesan. This was out of this world. I'm telling you, it was absolutely amazing. I don't know how they did such a simple, I think it's simple anyway, a simple dish so well. Now, most of you know, it's breaded chicken, fried, and then it's baked in a tomato sauce with melted mozzarella over the top. Brown it. It was so tender. The old saying, oh, so tender you can cut it with a fork. I cut it with my fork. It was thick. It was big. It was juicy. It was flavorful. The sauce was good. I don't try to judge Italian marinara sauces because I know, every Italian family has their way of doing it. It tasted fine to me. It was a nice accompaniment to the chicken parmesan, but I could not get over how delicious that dish was. I say it a lot, but I can't wait to go back there for this chicken parmesan. And like I said, the crab cake was excellent that my wife had. The pasta that my friend Anthony had was decent. Wasn't my cup of tea. But for a place that I thought was Mexican at first, and then I was told it was Italian, and that they're famous for their crab cakes, it is well worth going there. Decent prices too. Very, very decent prices, I thought, for the dinner that we had. Anyway, that's Casa Mia. They are at 2298 Glens Bay Road in Surfside. Cool place, friendly, very reasonable prices. Like I said, even though they're Italian, it's a bit eclectic to me. Jerk chicken in a pasta in an Italian restaurant. Okay, like I said before, if the food's good, I really don't care what they call themselves. But they have a fresh catch of the day. Like I said, people are friendly. It's nice inside. It's not overdone. You don't feel like it's a fine dining restaurant. It's comfortable. It's friendly. It's got good food, and it's reasonably priced. So check it out. So anyway, we talked about a couple restaurants today. We had Chef Robert Kaufman on talking about US Foods. He's the corporate chef there. Another cool thing about US Foods is if anybody is thinking about opening a restaurant and you're going to need a restaurant supply place, they cook food for you there. You just get a hold of Robert and he'll do it, or one of his colleagues will do it. They put together dishes that you're interested in, from the products that they sell. It's a real cool thing. But he is also the chef for the tasting menu series at the Tasting Room on 9th. So make sure you check that out. Go onto their website, and they'll tell you when the next private dinner is coming up. And check out the Tasting Room on 9th anyway. Like I said to Robert, I haven't been there, but I've only heard real good things about it. And remember, he mentioned Pizza 501 in Conway. I can't wait to try that one. And of course, I talked about Casa Mia. Another pretty good find, that Casa Mia. I can't wait to go back there, and you folks should check it out. Anyway, that's about going to wrap it up for the show tonight. And whether you go out to dinner tonight or tomorrow night or you stay home and cook, always remember that you are your family's private chef. Thanks for listening.